Hey, Battle Bill, here with another video, and today we're going to get into even more Great League Go Battle League battles. So, a friend of mine actually messaged me recently, and he was telling me he was having a lot of success with a specific team that he's been using in his rank 9 battles to try and make an end-of-season push to rank 10. And just like I mentioned in the past couple videos, I've been doing a lot of videos on Mud Boys, and you guys have been super positive about it in the comments, and I appreciate that, but I also want to bring you as much diversity as I possibly can. So he sent me a set of 5 battles with a team that consists of Victory Bell as the lead, Defense Deoxys, and Bastiodon in the back, which is a little bit more of a unique team that I've seen. I've seen those Pokemon on other teams, like in different parts, like they're all fairly meta mons in Great League battles, but all together is a little bit more unique. I don't think I've seen a team where I've seen all 3 of them. So I definitely wanted to go through his battle clips. I wanted to talk through some of these battles. I wanted to talk about the strengths and the weaknesses of the team, and maybe it's a team you could potentially use, especially because a lot of the battles I do are at rank 10. I guess logically speaking, if a team works for me at rank 10, it would work for you at the lower ranks. But this is a team that he's gained a lot of points on, and he felt was strong, and like I said, I want to show you guys much diversity. And he's been climbing the ranks. He's now at rank 9. He's in the 2700s. Yeah, he's in the 2700s, and he told me he had gone up hundreds of points with this team. So I'm going to feature a set of his battles. And off the bat, before we even get into the battles, one thing I actually noticed is the team is a little weak to the double Mudboy strat. It has a Victory Bell lead, which will lose to Skarmory, and then Deoxys and Bastion on the back would definitely lose to both Swampert and Whiscash. So one thing I'd be worried about with using this team right off the bat is potentially facing a Mudboy in the back, but other than that, there are no real obvious weaknesses with this team. And again, you can't not use a team because of one weakness. I cannot stress that enough. That my team has a clear weakness. The double Mudboy strat has a clear weakness. So if I didn't use it, I would never be where I currently am rating-wise. So let's get that off right at the bat, and now let's get into these battles. So his first battle is up against 7Flash97, and he's going in with the Victory Bell lead, and right off the bat, he has a poor start, or a poor lead. He's got a Victory Bell on Hypno. You don't want to stay in this matchup as Victory Bell because you're part Poison type, and Hypno's confusions are going to deal super effective damage to your Victory Bell. So he goes for the immediate swap in the Defense Deoxys, and what you'll notice is he's actually running a pretty unique move set on Defense Deoxys. I typically see Psycho Boost, Rock Slide, or Rock Slide Thunderbolt. He's actually running probably one of the more unique options or varieties out of those 3 moves. I mean, there's only 3 real options there, but that would be Psycho Boost and Thunderbolt. And it works out well, because as we go through this clip, his Deoxys actually gets matched with a bunch of Azumarill, and that Thunderbolt's going to come in handy. What's also important is him shielding that Hydro Pump that he just shielded. So they see MP Tide. It made the most sense from the shield there. Hydro Pump would definitely flip the matchup between the Azumarill and Deoxys, but now that he was able to shield that and land the Thunderbolt, he's sitting clear, and he's actually regained switch advantage. It definitely didn't help that his opponent took a minute to really pull off the swap that he had pulled in. So now we're waiting to see what his opponent's counter move is going to be to deal with his Defense Deoxys. And he's waiting out the switch timer, and he happens to bring in his own Meganium. So what my friend here is doing is he's overcharging. This is the biggest thing that I stress when running Defense Deoxys. Even though he's going to be met by this Frenzy Plant, Defense Deoxys is so tanky, it'll survive with a little bit of health. When you're running Psycho Boost on Defense Deoxys, you need to overcharge, because it's going to nerf you. So if you want to do the maximum amount of counter damage you could possibly do, you need to charge up 2 Psycho Boosts, and then throw them back to back, like my friend here is about to do right here. So he threw off both of these Psycho Boosts, and every little amount of damage you can get off is important. So he did that. His Deoxys served its purpose. He hasn't gotten a shield yet, but what he can do and what he's about to do is bring in this Victory Bell, and that's actually going to shred this Meganium down before it can get off a charge move. So through the Frenzy Plant, I guess we really want to get to the Earthquake, because another Frenzy Plant on Victory Bell wasn't going to do too much. But now the opponent brought in his Hypno and is going for the charge move. Honestly, my friend here throws the shields. I don't think I would have thrown the shields here. Yes, it was an Ice Punch, and that would hurt the Victory Bell, and getting off this Leaf Blade and the Razor Leafs is important. But my friend here has a Bastiodon in the back, and that would essentially wall the Hypno unless the Hypno's running Focus Blast. So maybe that was his logic. Maybe he was worried that the 3rd move would have been Focus Blast. But honestly, in Great League Go Battle League, you're not really going to see too many Hypnos with Focus Blast. As much as it would be a great move for the Hypno to deal with Bastiodon or Registeel, other than that, it doesn't have too much play, and his opponent realizes he doesn't have a matchup against my friend's Bastiodon, and he ends up quitting out the match. So, solid play there. Definitely a solid match. It's dope to start off the set 1-0. Honestly, I watched the matches, but now that I think about it, I don't really remember how he finished the set. I would assume it's a pretty positive set, or he wouldn't have sent it in. But this next battle he's got is up against RXY and some numbers. And this lead is a lot more positive. So in the last one, he won the first match, and he technically lost that lead, and Defense Deoxys was able to kind of flip that situation. Here he's got Victory Bell on Wigglytuff, and I'm surprised his opponent hasn't swapped out. And what that kind of tells me is that his opponent doesn't really have a great counter for Victory Bell in the back. Because Victory Bell's resisting all these charms, and as you can tell, these Razor Leaves from Victory Bell are tearing apart the Wigglytuff, and that Leaf Blade just completely takes it out. So his opponent brings in a Toxicroak, and as much as now Toxicroak is resisting the Razor Leaves from Victory Bell, Toxicroak is pretty glassy, so they're really starting to add up. Now his opponent's going for a charge move, and my friend here decides to go for a Mud Bomb, and decides to shield the Mud Bomb, which I don't blame him because he was super close to this Leaf Blade. And it's pretty important to get off that charge move damage, especially even though Toxicroak resists, it still got a shield like it just did here, and it would have done a solid chunk to Toxicroak because of how glassy it is. Now, in the back, he's got Deoxys or Bastiodon. You definitely don't want to bring in Bastiodon there. Toxicroak would start to slaughter it down. So he brought in the Defense Deoxys. His opponent's going for a charge move. He decides not to shield it. It ends up being a Sludge Bomb, but Defense Deoxys is so bulky, it was able to tank it pretty well. So right now, he's just committing to the counter down, which I 100% agree with. So his opponent probably got to another Sludge Bomb here, so he's going to shield just to preserve all that energy he built up on his Deoxys. But now, it ends up being a Mud Bomb. I still think that shield was important. But now his opponent swaps in and brings in a Azumarill, and he's got at least about 1.5 Thunderbolts here to deal with this Azumarill. So again, running this moveset, super important. It definitely helped him in the last match because the Psycho Boosts were able to deal neutral damage to that Meganium, which Rock Slide and Thunderbolt wouldn't have been able to do. And now he still has the Thunderbolt access to deal with these Azumarills, so he's going for a second one here. And once this goes through, this is either going to pull the last shield or do a chunk of damage and pull the last shield. And my friend here is sitting pretty, even though his Deoxys is about to go down from this Azumarill. So he's got a full, healthy Bastiodon in the back, and the Bastiodon has to be worried about the Azumarill Hydro Pump, but these smackdowns from Bastiodon will start to add up, and Bastiodon can tank Hydro Pump from Azumarill. What also has to be kept in mind is that Toxicroak is super low. So you might be thinking maybe he should be worried about it, but once that Toxicroak comes in, it's going to go down to like the first quick move that happens. So his opponent goes for a Hydro Pump. You see, it got the Bastiodon on the red, but like I said, he was still able to tank it. Bastiodon doesn't really get one-shotted by many moves, even the super effective ones. So he goes for the Stone Edge here, takes out the Azumarill, and once that Toxicroak comes in, we're going to see it go down. And after 2 battles, my friend here is off to a 2-0 set, and he showed some solid work there. He lost the lead in the first one, won the lead in the second one, and having that, I guess, Defense Deoxys as a safe switch had really kind of helped him keep the balance and keep the order in these first 2 matches so far. So now Nick's going into the third match, and his opponent is going to be High For You. And obviously he's sticking with the same lead. Now he's got a Victory Bell on a Bastiodon lead here, which is an interesting situation to play out. Bastiodon's tanky, but these Razor Leaves from Victory Bell will slowly add up. What you'll also notice, because Victory Bell is so glassy, that the smackdowns from Bastiodon are starting to also add up on the Victory Bell. He actually happens to get to his charge move first. Maybe the Bastiodon was overcharging. That's very possible. Leaf Blade is still a pretty cheap move. He throws it. It gets the Bastiodon in the yellow. And I guess the one main thing that you'd want to do in this situation is do what Nick's about to do, which is shield his first charge move, because the Bastiodon probably just got to it even if it overcharged a little bit, and because of that, he's still going to be able to send off a bunch more Razor Leaves. I'm honestly not too sure who wins this matchup. It's getting pretty close. He goes for a swap to try and catch his opponent off guard to counter down the Bastiodon. The Bastiodon escapes with like minimal HP, and then his opponent brings in an Azumarill to counter his Defense Deoxys, which is really interesting because I don't use Azumarill much or Defense Deoxys, so I never realized that so many people would bring in Azumarills to deal with Defense Deoxys. But if the Defense Deoxys is running Thunderbolt, it doesn't seem like a very positive situation to be throwing your Azumarill into. Now, if I was Nick, I would probably throw up the shield just to be safe no matter what, especially because this ends up being a Hydro Pump, and you'll notice how low into the yellow it got the Defense Deoxys. I would have probably shielded that. I mean, it could have been a bait, obviously. That's probably why he didn't shield. He might have been expecting a bait. But even an Ice Beam does decent damage, and you can essentially kind of, again, flip switch advantage if you catch that Hydro Pump and then Thunderbolt the Azumarill down. But now instead, his opponent's getting to another charge move. This is definitely going to be an Ice Beam because you don't need a Hydro Pump to take Deoxys down at this health. But I guess also his logic might have been, you know what, Victory Bell can come back in and essentially slaughter the Azumarill, which it's about to do. He actually brings in the Bastiodon quickly to try and, I guess, take down the Victory Bell. And the Victory Bell just barely survived. And then one other thing that just happens here that I want to go over is he goes for the charge move immediately, and you'll notice it kind of popped up on screen. It said Go Hypno, which was a huge mistake on his opponent's side. Because his Victory Bell was so low, his opponent should have sent in the Azumarill to try and catch any energy the Victory Bell might have had. By him sending in the the Hypno, it essentially allowed the Leaf Blade to hit the Hypno, whereas if you send the Azumarill, the Leaf Blade would have either hit the Azumarill or they would have simultaneously KO'd, because one bubble would have definitely taken down the Victory Bell. So that was a huge mistake on his opponent's side. It made his Hypno take more damage than it needed to take, but again, at the same circumstance, Nick still has a Bastiodon in the back with the whole shields, so this Hypno didn't stand the chance regardless. One other thing I want to mention, and I don't know how much this has been gone over by other YouTubers, and this is something that I recently learned about from other friends of mine. When your opponent's bringing in their Pokemon, you can get an idea of what Pokemon they're bringing in if you look in the top right corner of the screen. If you notice this switch to Azumarill, you'll see the Signia went from Psychic to then Water and Fairy because he pulled off a quick swap. That's the first thing that actually appears on screen whenever somebody's sending in a Pokemon. It appears before the words appear, and it appears before you actually see the Pokemon. You'll see the typing, so you can get an idea of what they're bringing in based on that. So I don't know if Nick realized that, which is why he threw the Leaf Blade right away, or if he was just like, I'm going to throw a Leaf Blade no matter what. But that's another helpful hint to essentially assist you in a type of situation like that. So now his opponent ends up quitting because, again, that Bastiodon Hypno matchup always goes to the Bastiodon, unless, again, that Hypno is running Focus Blast. We already talked about that, so I'm not going to repeat myself. But let's get into the fourth battle here. He's going up against Scott, 1534. And as the leads come out, we'll realize that he's actually up against a Meganium. So now this is an interesting matchup, and I haven't seen this matchup in a while since I've done Sylph battles, I'm pretty sure. And I'm pretty confident the Meganium only wins this matchup if it lands the Earthquake. But instead, Nick decides to swap out, and he's going to catch, because this was way too quick, this is going to end up being a Frenzy Plant. He's going to catch a Frenzy Plant on this Defense Deoxys to essentially tank it. But I do think the Victory Bell could have won that matchup out. And again, somebody's swapping in an Azumarill to deal with this Deoxys. But at least in this specific situation, the Deoxys is at half health, so landing the Hydro Pump isn't as important. I don't know how, I guess unless you don't have another counter for Defense Deoxys, I don't know how comfortable I would feel bringing in Azumarill, who's going to take super effective damage from a Thunderbolt, to then deal with a Deoxys that's super tanky. But regardless, his opponent's going for the charge move. He decides to throw up the shield. It's an Ice Beam, makes sense. You don't need a Hydro Pump to take out the Deoxys at this health. And it made sense to shield. He's overcharging here. He's now going to go for a Thunderbolt. I mean, honestly, because he's going for the Thunderbolt, I guess the overcharge wasn't too necessary, but it's always good to play with your energy just to try and trick your opponent in case they might think you have less than you actually do, and you can try and sneak in another charge move before they realize. But his opponent's now getting to another Ice Beam, and he has to debate whether or not he wants a shield. He ends up shielding it, and I wonder, oh, interesting. He must have clicked the Psycho Boost and CMP Tide there. So I wonder how this is going to actually play out. Because the Psycho Boost is not going to do enough to take out the Azumarill. It goes shielded, but now these counters are going to do way less. And it's going to take... He's not going to get to another Thunderbolt before the Azumarill either would have bubbled him down or gotten to another charge move. They CMP Tide here. This is definitely another Ice Beam, and that's going to take out the Defense Deoxys. I think that was a bit of a questionable play. The Victory Bell can now come in, though, and shred the Azumarill down. And now there are no shields. So if that Meganium comes back out, he knows he got the Meganium's energy. So this actually ends up working out a lot better, because now the Victory Bell can go for the Sludge Bomb, which would be super effective, and is really going to hurt this Meganium. So I wonder what the opponent's other Pokemon was, but bringing Meganium in a no-shielded situation was definitely not his brightest idea. This other Pokemon ends up being Vigoroth, and ooh, this Victory Bell is going to town. Now, this Body Slam from Vigoroth is definitely going to hurt Victory Bell because of how glassy it is. But you can already tell that the Razor Leafs have already essentially shredded it down to a third to half health. Ooh, we just barely fell short of the Leaf Blade, and that might cost him in this matchup, but the Victory Bell might be just low enough that this Bulldoze isn't going to take out the Bastiodon. So this is definitely going to be a Bulldoze. That's this Vigoroth's only chance at winning here, and those counters added up. He lands a Bulldoze, and Bulldoze is just such a bad move, on top of the fact Vigoroth doesn't get any stab. Yes, there was lag there, but the Smackdowns would have definitely taken out the Vigoroth in that situation before the counters from Vigoroth took out the Bastiodon. So I don't really think lag ended up affecting it, even though you didn't see any health go down from the Bastiodon. But that was a very interesting end to that fourth matchup. So I do think there were some mistakes made on both ends, but overall, definitely a solid match. And now Nick is off to a 4-0 start in the set. Now getting into Game 5, Nick is going up against Vegas and a bunch of letters and numbers afterwards. Ooh, and he gets the best possible lead he can get for his Victory Bell. Victory Bell on a Mudboy. Look at how much health that one Razor Leaf did. Went for the immediate swap in the Bastiodon, and Defense Deoxys is going to pretty much wall this Bastiodon at this point for two reasons. The counters are super effective on the Bastiodon, and you always want to go for Thunderbolt if you're running it on Deoxys when you're going up against the Bastiodon, because it'll deal neutral damage. Yes, that's not a lot, but between the counters and then that Thunderbolt, even though it's a little bit of damage, this Bastiodon is going to essentially be walled here. The Bastiodon will go for his Stone Edge, but you'll see that it just barely gets Deoxys in the yellow, and honestly at this point, Nick can just commit to a farm down and have a bunch of energy for what's most likely going to be a Swampert that comes back into this matchup. So we're going to wait out the switch timer. He brings in the Swampert immediately. Nick goes for his charge move immediately, and he's throwing the Psycho Boost. I don't think he has enough for 2 Psycho Boosts. I think he's like a counter short, a couple counters short, but it wasn't too big of a difference, and you'll see that his opponent didn't shield it and how much damage that ended up doing. Now, this next one's nerfed, but actually it might not get the shield because of the Victory Bell. So basically the Swampert came in to just eat a bunch of the Deoxys' energy, but this is not looking like too good of a situation for his opponent. So the Swampert's going to finally take out the Deoxys here. Swampert's practically dead. You could bring in the Victory Bell to finish shredding it. But now he's got 2 Pokemon, Victory Bell and Bastiodon. His opponent has 1 Pokemon, which ends up being Meganium. But considering it's a 2-shield to 2-shield matchup, that Meganium really didn't have too much of a chance against either the Victory Bell or the Bastiodon. So what's that? 3 forced quits in this one set? So honestly, overall, I think this is a pretty solid team. This one definitely gets my seal of approval, if that means anything. Now, that was a set of 5 battles from my friend Nick228, and honestly, I mean, I guess I could maybe give it the little approval rating that I did for my subscribers team the other day, and we've definitely bounced back from videos from going from a team that I wouldn't really recommend to a team I would, I'm trying to debate. I would recommend it. I'm trying to think how high I would recommend it. It does have the weakness to Mudboys in the back. That's a concern. But you did just see in that last matchup how quickly that Victory Bell shredded that Shredded that Swampert. So on a scale of 1 to 10, these are ranked 9 battles. It has to be taken into consideration. There were some mistakes. Well, it really was one match where there were some mistakes. He was able to overcome a couple bad, like, losing leads. I still got to check the sim on that Victory Bell Meganium lead. I'm pretty confident that if you can shield the Earthquake from Meganium, Victory Bell can win that one. I got to double check that. He won the other couple, though. He lost one to Hypno, won one to Wigglytuff. Let's say call it even on Victory Bell. He won the one on Swampert. I gotta have more criteria to this. But I would think, I'm gonna say just because of the fact that they were ranked 9 battles, I don't want to give it as high as a 10. He showcased some really great battles here though, and it really highlighted how strong the team is. So I think I would give this team a rating of an 8 out of 10. I would recommend it. I definitely would suggest trying it out, especially if you're in that rank 9 area. And overall, other than that, let me know what you think in the comments. Maybe there's some weaknesses I missed. I'm not an expert, honestly. I don't even know if my rating holds any value. So like, it might not. Who listens to me? But that's what I think, and I could be completely wrong. Seeing 5 battles doesn't really completely determine a team's strength or its weakness. You could go with any team and go 5-0. Depending on your rank, and you can go with any team and go 0-5 also, especially if you don't know how to play out certain matchups. But overall, though, I do think this team is fairly balanced. It had that one main weakness I pointed out, and I really can't think, even after going through all those battles, if there are any other weaknesses. So, if you have a team that you want to be featured on the channel, I know I've been talking about you guys suggesting me teams to try out. But if you have a set of 5 battles that you want me to shoutcast, you know, similar to Zionic or similar to the way King does, where it's your actual battles, not me testing your team, follow me on Twitter. Is it that way or that way? I don't know which way I edit. But follow me on Twitter, and then you can DM me and we'll talk about if I can shoutcast your team or not. Other than that, don't forget, like, comment, subscribe. I've been getting like a ton of views, and I appreciate that. But I also would love if the people that are watching would subscribe. Unless you just hate the content, then I understand. You don't have to subscribe. But I'll catch you guys in the next video.